I'm Sheila Malcolmson. I, for 12 years, 4 times, was elected to the Islands Trust as a trustee on Gabriola Island, which has a population of 4,000 people or so. And very much like Salt Spring, a commuter island, and 80% of the residents live full-time on the island, so lots of similarities. For 6 of those years, I was also elected by my peers at Islands Trust Council, all 26 trustees from all 13 different island groups. They elected me as the chair of Islands Trust Council, and that put me as the chair of the Salt Spring Trust Committee for 6 years. So we did a lot of meetings together. I'm now the Member of Parliament for Nanaimo Ladysmith, and I really did get this job by virtue of what islanders taught me. People from all the islands. I'm very grateful for the ways that I learned from islanders, and now I'm able to take that experience to Ottawa and stand up for the coast in a completely different realm. When the Islands Trust was created in 1974, the development pressures on the islands were tremendous. Ferry service had just been introduced, the economy was booming, more people could get to the islands, and with no land use planning framework, the subdivisions were out of control. So all parties recognized that they needed to do something. It was a rare moment where all political parties provincially agreed. The beauty of the Islands Trust is the way that we work together, all islanders, 465 islands, 25,000 people, and how there have been so many generations of people working to carry out the mandate of the Trust to preserve and protect. And we're stronger when we work together. So all the 6 years that I was chair of the Salt Spring Local Trust Committee, I love to be able to say, oh, this was tried on Hornby Island, or Gabriola tried that, and it didn't work so well then, but maybe we could tweak it. So it wasn't just the accumulation of governance and community experience in one community, but we got to harvest the hits and misses over 40 years of experimenting with how to use land use bylaws and how to do long-term community planning in such a sensitive area. And I can't think why anybody would want to give up on that cooperative, federated model, because we learn so much from each other on the planning side when we work together. And we do better when we work together. So I feel so strongly that the founders of the Islands Trust, those first trustees, those politicians that brought it into place, they were way ahead of their time. And right now, with the pressures of climate change, with groundwater scarcity, with income disparity, all the pressures that our country is feeling now, we've already worked out some of those things right here in the islands, and it was because of the Islands Trust governance model. We've got things to teach the rest of the country, and we should be proud that we incubated those ideas right here in the Gulf Islands and in the Salish Sea. What we really noticed as trustees, because we move from one island to the next when we do our quarterly council meetings, all 26 trustees meet 4 times a year. They're 3-day-long meetings. So once every few years we would go to Bowen Island because it's part of the Islands Trust. But within its municipal structure, it had a very different flavor going to that island. When we would come off the ferry, we just didn't get the same kind of visual cues. We didn't have the same feeling of being part of the Federation. During those 6 years that I was chair, we worked quite hard to try to raise the profile of the Trust and to work with some of the municipal elected councillors to raise the profile of the Islands Trust Conservancy and to really make sure that our planning staff were coordinating with Bowen's planning staff. But it had been many, many years of kind of a neglected relationship. And I did get the sense that that council was more isolated by virtue of not being knit fully into the Islands Trust Federation. I mean, they're still part of the Islands Trust Council, but it had very little visible impact, it felt like, on the island. Let alone the fact that they had a huge amount of development pressure, just an avalanche of development pressure as soon as they incorporated as a municipality. And that was very hard on the councillors as well, and hard on the community. And I think that key, not being involved in the land use planning, had a big difference Bowen wasn't getting the benefit of the experience of what land use planning tools other islanders had worked out. And so I think by result, their land use planner, they usually would only have one, would feel very isolated and not getting the benefit of the other islands' experience. And we just didn't keep the connection the way that the islands that were still fully part of the land use planning function did. It just felt different on Bowen. Let me share my experience on Gabriola Island. I was first elected as a trustee in 2002. Gabriola was already in the middle of a governance study on whether to incorporate. Salt Spring had just had their vote. They voted 70% against incorporation. And there we were, our community kind of ripping itself apart with this yes, no, rural incorporation. It was a very divisive process. In the end, as a trustee, I voted no to incorporation in our Gabriola process. A number of things led to that. We got, the governance study said that we were going to pay more tax, but particularly farmers were going to pay way more tax. The rural municipal system for farmers is very different at the taxation level. We also learned more and more that there were a whole lot of governance tools in the Islands Trust and the regional district toolbox that we hadn't yet used. So if we wanted more powers or more ability to affect whether it was forestry on residential lots or water conservation or all kinds of forms of land use regulation, we had a lot more things that we could do already, but islanders didn't want us to use them. I mean, that's why we weren't including those regulations into our regional district or our local trust committee framework, is that islanders just didn't want to be told what to do on their land. So it started to feel to me, why would we go into a municipal model which would theoretically give us more tools in our land use planning toolbox, but they were tools that islanders had already told us that they didn't want us to use. Plus, it would risk tremendous download from the provincial government. Liberal government had just been elected in BC, and they were showing a very strong appetite to download responsibilities onto municipal governments that they couldn't download onto rural governments like ours. We also had the situation of Gabriola had more kilometers of road per capita than any municipality in the province. And I think Salt Spring has some of that problem as well. Those roads were built on old logging slash. They were not engineered. And we had the roads maintenance crews that work with MCON come to our meetings and say, look, between us, we have 60 years of experience working on Gabriola roads, and we are telling you they're badly built, and when they fail, they'll be ruinously expensive. Right now, if we have a road failure, it ends up being the provincial taxpayer that spreads that cost across from the whole province to look after emergency repairs, but that would be all on the municipal taxpayer. And cumulatively, those arguments, we didn't know how the vote was going to go. There seemed to be a great deal of support for it, but on the night of the referendum, we were so relieved to have a 70% voter turnout, huge turnout. People that hadn't voted in elections for decades came out for that because they felt so strongly. And we had an 87% no vote. So that really, for us, closed the door on the municipal question. We spent a great deal of money and community time and a lot of conflict in the community around whether we should incorporate as a municipality. It was such a strong no vote that I felt very strong for the next 10 years as a trustee of working with confidence with the community, with the land use planning model of the Islands Trust.